They say the corporate world rewards loyalty. But that's a lie they tell you to keep you quiet. I learned the truth the hard way. The moment you're inconvenient, when you stand in the way of someone else's ambition, they'll feed you to the wolves. I wasn't naive. I just didn't expect it to come from her. The one who smiled in my face while she plotted to destroy me. This isn't about screaming matches or dramatic exits. It's about planning, watching, collecting every receipt while they think you're broken. It's about the power of knowing you can end someone's career with a single email, because you did the work to make it undeniable. Before we dive in, tell me, have you ever let someone push you too far? Have you fantasized about shutting them down so thoroughly they'd never try it again? Drop your country in the comments. Let's see where all the quiet strategists are listening from tonight. Get comfortable. This isn't just a story. It's a warning. And if you're patient enough, it's a blueprint. I'm not the type of person who likes to cause trouble. I always try to be professional, friendly, dependable. That's how you survive as one of the only women on a male-dominated engineering team. Or at least, that's what I used to think. My name's Rachel Morgan. I spent 6 years at a consulting firm in Springfield, Missouri. Not some fancy city gig, just a mid-size office where everyone knew everyone's business. We did civil and structural projects for local governments and private companies. The work itself wasn't bad. I loved engineering, solving problems, seeing my designs get built. But the office politics were poison. Especially when it came to one coworker in particular, Lisa. Lisa had been there forever. She was maybe 10 years older than me, early 40s, with a fake sweet "I'm just looking out for you" voice she used to stab people in the back. She was technically senior to me, but only on paper. She'd barely contributed anything meaningful in years. She liked to take credit, deflect blame, and make sure no one outshone her. From the moment I got promoted to project lead on a small municipal bridge job, she hated me. She didn't even hide it. She'd make these passive-aggressive comments in meetings. Things like, "Oh, Rachel's so ambitious," dripping with sarcasm. Or, "We don't need to reinvent the wheel just because you have something to prove." I did my best to ignore it. I really did. I thought if I just focused on my work, stayed polite, she'd eventually give up. But Lisa was the kind of person who smelled weakness. Then there was my boss, Mark. Nice enough guy, but spineless. He couldn't manage conflict to save his life. If you brought him a problem, he'd hum and haw, then say, "Just work it out among yourselves." Which was code for "I don't want to get involved." HR was fine in theory. We had Sarah, the HR manager, who was friendly and actually seemed to care about doing things right. But it was a small company. HR wasn't empowered to do much unless things got truly bad. For a long time, I thought I could handle it. The snide remarks, the constant undermining, it wasn't great, but I could deal. I wasn't new to being underestimated in engineering. But everything changed after my surgery. I decided the previous year to get breast implants. My choice. I saved for it myself. I scheduled it carefully so I could take 2 weeks off, a mix of paid vacation and unpaid leave. I filed all the paperwork properly. I even gave extra notice so they wouldn't be short-handed. I thought that was the responsible thing. But when I came back, it was obvious I'd had work done. Not because I was flaunting it, but because the swelling was still there. I wore baggy sweaters, but you can't really hide that kind of change. I felt a little self-conscious, but I never imagined what Lisa would do. The first day back, I caught her staring. I remember the fake smile she gave me. "Welcome back, Rachel," she said, but her eyes were like knives. By lunch, she was already whispering to people. I overheard her saying, "Well, it's not just vacation she took. Must be nice if the company insurance pays for vanity." I felt my stomach drop. That wasn't just gossip. That was accusing me of fraud. I tried to confront her quietly. I pulled her aside. I said, "Hey, Lisa, what are you telling people? That's not true. I paid for everything myself. Please don't spread lies." She gave me this wide-eyed, innocent look. I'm just saying what people noticed. You don't have to get so defensive. Defensive. As if I was the one in the wrong. I walked away shaking. That should have been the end of it. It wasn't. Because Lisa didn't just gossip. She went to my boss. She told HR. She formally accused me of lying about my leave reason and misusing insurance. And that's where this nightmare really began. I didn't know it yet, but that accusation would turn my office upside down and nearly destroy my career. I'll never forget the moment HR called me in. I was sitting at my desk trying to get through punch list items for the municipal bridge project when I got the email. Subject: Leave Policy Inquiry. My heart sank. I walked down the hallway to HR, my palms sweating. Sarah, our HR manager, greeted me with that careful, I have to be neutral tone. She invited me to sit. Rachel, she began gently, we received a complaint alleging that your medical leave was misrepresented, that you used company insurance to pay for elective surgery. My mouth went dry. I said, that's not true. I paid for everything out of pocket. My leave was vacation and unpaid. I submitted all of it correctly. Sarah nodded like she believed me, but she also had a stack of papers on her desk. I'm required to review this formally. Can you please provide any receipts or medical notes confirming it wasn't billed to our plan? I felt humiliated. My personal choices were now the company's business. Not because I'd done anything wrong, but because Lisa was determined to ruin me. I left that meeting shaking. I went back to my desk and tried to hold it together while Lisa watched me from across the room, that smug smile on her face. It was like I was under a microscope. Within a day, people were whispering. I heard my name in hushed tones. I heard laughter cut off when I walked by. Even people I considered work friends suddenly seemed cautious, avoiding eye contact. I confronted Mark, my boss. I told him, you know I didn't do this. You know I followed the policy. He wouldn't look me in the eye. HR has to check it out, Rachel, he mumbled. I can't get involved. I wanted to scream at him, but I didn't. I just swallowed the anger and left his office. For 2 weeks, my life was hell. HR had to do a full investigation. I brought them my surgeon's payment confirmation, my credit card statement, my formal time-off request. They verified with the insurance carrier that there was no claim. It was all clean. But it didn't matter that I was innocent. The damage was done. Lisa didn't even try to hide her glee. She'd whisper to people while looking at me, raising her eyebrows and smirking. She'd say things like, well, if there's nothing to hide, she shouldn't be so upset. One day in the break room she said loud enough for me to hear, I just think people should be honest about why they're gone for 2 weeks. We all pick up the slack. I snapped. I said, you want to say something, Lisa? Say it to my face. She smiled serenely. I didn't say anything about you. It was gaslighting at its finest. My friend Kevin tried to help. He sent me screenshots where Lisa was trash-talking me on Teams chat to another coworker, saying I was a fake bimbo who used sex appeal to get projects. I saved them. I didn't know what I'd do with them yet, but I knew I needed proof. Finally, HR finished their review. They called me in and said, Rachel, you're clear. There's no policy violation. We're closing this. Sarah gave me a sympathetic look. I nodded, thanked her, and left. But I was so angry I couldn't see straight. Lisa didn't even get a slap on the wrist. She sauntered around acting like she'd been vindicated. She told people, well, HR couldn't prove anything either way. Flat out lying. She was poison. And my boss Mark? Useless. He just told me, I'm glad that's settled. Let's all move on. Move on. He wanted me to act like it hadn't happened. Like I hadn't been humiliated. Like I hadn't had to share my personal medical documents just to keep my job. That day I went home and cried. I sat in my car in the company lot for 10 minutes, shaking with rage and shame. When I got home, I poured a glass of wine and stared at the wall for hours. Because something broke in me that day. I realized no one was going to save me. HR wouldn't protect me. My boss wouldn't stand up for me. And Lisa wasn't going to stop. She'd come for me once. She'd do it again. That's when I made the decision. I wouldn't just survive her. I'd destroy her. I didn't know exactly how yet. But I knew this. The next time she came for me, I'd be ready. I wish I could tell you I snapped into action immediately. That the very next day, I marched into the office with my head held high and took Lisa down. But real life isn't like that. Instead, I spent weeks trapped in quiet humiliation. After HR closed the investigation, everyone acted like it was over. Like everything was normal. Except it wasn't normal for me. People avoided my eye. Even the ones who believed me didn't want to get involved. You could see it in the way they talked around me. Like I was radioactive. I'd walk into the break room and the conversation would just stop. Or I'd hear them whisper after I left. Lisa had poisoned the well. She didn't even have to keep spreading the rumor. She'd already done the damage. She knew it, too. She walked around with this smug confidence, like she'd won. She'd shoot me these pitying looks. "You doing okay, Rachel? You seem stressed lately." I wanted to scream. My boss, Mark? Useless as ever. He didn't want to hear about personal conflicts. He actually had the gall to tell me I should try being the bigger person. The bigger person. Apparently that meant pretending I hadn't been accused of defrauding the company, forced to hand over private medical documents, and turned into office gossip fodder. I wanted to quit so many times. Every morning I'd sit in my car before work, taking deep breaths, reminding myself I had bills. I had a mortgage. I couldn't just walk out. I even updated my resume. I sent it to a few places. But I didn't get any bites right away. And honestly, I didn't want to leave like this. I didn't want her to win. But the worst part wasn't even Lisa's lies. It was how everyone let her get away with it. Kevin tried to be there for me. He was the only one who'd actually forward me the stuff she said about me in chat. She called me HR Barbie. She joked I should just sleep with the client to close the deal. I showed it to Mark. He looked uncomfortable and said, "Well, that's unprofessional, but I don't want to escalate things further. It'll just make the team environment worse." I was stunned. Lisa was allowed to say whatever she wanted about me, but if I complained, I was the one making it worse. One day she cornered me after a meeting. We were the last ones in the conference room. She gave me that fake sweet smile. She said, "Listen, I just think it's important to be transparent with the team. You disappearing for 2 weeks left us all in the lurch. It's not my fault people are curious." My jaw dropped. I said, "You didn't just make people curious. You told them I committed fraud." She blinked innocently. "Did I? I don't think I said that exactly." I felt my vision go red. I had to grip the back of a chair to keep from lunging at her. She just watched me, smiling, before she walked out. I stood there alone in that stupid beige conference room, shaking. That was rock bottom for me. Because I realized she didn't even care if people knew she was lying. She enjoyed it. She wanted me to react, to lose it. She wanted to watch me unravel. And for a minute, I almost did. That night I went home and cried so hard I couldn't breathe. I remember lying on my bathroom floor, my face pressed to the cool tile, wondering if I should just give up. Maybe she'd won. Maybe it wasn't worth it. But then, in that moment of pure despair, something in me hardened. I thought about all the times in my life I'd let people walk over me because I didn't want to be difficult. Because I wanted to be the nice one. Because I wanted to be liked. Lisa was counting on that. She was counting on me being too polite, too professional, too scared to fight back. That was the moment I decided, Never again. I wasn't going to let her do this to me. I wasn't going to let her do it to anyone else. If no one else was going to hold her accountable, then I would. I didn't know exactly how yet. But I knew this. I was done being her victim. And the next time she came for me, I wouldn't just defend myself. I'd make sure she'd never do it to anyone again. I wish I could tell you that once I made that promise to myself, everything turned around. That I woke up the next morning powerful, ready to fight. But the truth is, change isn't that clean. It's messy. I was still so angry I could barely think straight. I started having trouble sleeping. I'd lie awake replaying every conversation with Lisa. Every humiliating moment. HR grilling me about my surgery. Mark telling me to be the bigger person. I'd clench my teeth so hard my jaw hurt. I didn't tell anyone how bad it got. I kept showing up to work, doing my job, pretending everything was fine. But inside I was seething. There were days I'd go to the bathroom just to cry. Quietly. Wiping my eyes so no one would see. I didn't want to give her the satisfaction. And Lisa. She was riding high. She'd gotten away with it. She'd humiliated me in front of the whole office. Branded me a liar and a cheat. Made me jump through hoops to prove I wasn't stealing from the company. And now she was acting like she was the adult in the room. She'd make these big speeches in meetings about integrity and ethics. I wanted to vomit. I remember one time she was going on about professionalism in front of the team, looking right at me the entire time. Kevin squeezed my arm under the table. It was the only thing that kept me from snapping. I think that's when I realized something important. Lisa wasn't going to stop. She'd already tried to get me fired once. She'd do it again if she could. And Mark would let her. HR might investigate again, but only if it got bad enough. And by then the damage would be done. I felt so powerless. That feeling, that hollow, churning helplessness, ate me alive. I started making mistakes at work. Not big ones, but enough. Forgetting to CC someone on an email. Misplacing a draft report. Mark called me in. He said, "You're not yourself lately, Rachel. Is everything okay?" I wanted to laugh in his face. He knew exactly what was wrong, but he didn't want to hear it. I mumbled that I was fine and left his office. That night I got home, locked my door, and screamed. Just this primal, ugly scream into the empty room. Because I couldn't keep living like this. Lisa had taken so much from me already. My reputation. My confidence. My peace of mind. She made me feel ashamed of my own body. And she did it all while playing the victim. I realized then that I didn't just want her to stop. I wanted her exposed. I wanted everyone to see her for what she really was. And that's when the idea started. It wasn't a plan yet, just a seed. But once it was there, I couldn't stop feeding it. I started replaying every conversation, every email, every petty slight. I remembered Kevin had those chat logs. I remembered the weird billing hours she bragged about in passing, saying I just copy last week's hours to save time. Little things I'd ignored because I didn't want to be petty. Now I wrote them down. I started making a list. Everything. I wanted proof. I wanted receipts. Because if I was going to take her down, I wasn't going to do it half-assed. I wasn't going to give HR or Mark or anyone else the chance to sweep it under the rug. I was going to make sure there was no way to ignore what she'd done. But I was also scared. Because let's be real, I'm not a superhero. I was just a woman who was tired of being treated like garbage. I knew if I went after her and failed, she'd ruin me completely. She'd tell everyone I was crazy, vindictive, unstable. I'd be out of a job, out of a career. So I hesitated. I wavered. I spent nights staring at my computer screen, my finger hovering over the delete key, wanting to give up. But every time I remembered her smiling at me while she lied, every time I remembered Mark telling me to move on, Every time I remembered HR asking for proof that my surgery wasn't fraud, it made me angrier. Anger was the only thing keeping me going. And I promised myself, if I was going to do this, I was going to do it right. Because the next time Lisa tried to come for me, I wouldn't just survive it. I'd make sure she'd never get the chance again. It started small. Just me, alone at my kitchen table with a spiral notebook and a pen. I wrote Lisa at the top in big block letters. Underneath, I started listing every shitty thing she'd done to me. It was therapeutic at first, just getting it out of my head and onto paper. But the more I wrote, the clearer it all became. This wasn't just gossip or office drama. She had deliberately tried to destroy me. And worse, she was reckless about it. She left evidence everywhere. For weeks, I became an undercover detective in my own office. I didn't tell anyone what I was doing. Not even Kevin. I just watched, listened, took notes. Lisa liked to brag when she felt safe. She'd complain to people about how annoying the billing software was. She'd say she just copied and pasted last week's hours because no one really checks. She'd joke about it like it was clever. I smiled politely, nodded along. But in my head, I wrote it down. I started checking our shared project folders. We billed hours to clients meticulously, at least the rest of us did. But Lisa's timesheets, sloppy. She'd bill 40 hours to a client she'd barely touched that week. I exported the logs. No one noticed. Meanwhile, she kept making snide comments. Oh, Rachel's working late again. She must want that promotion so badly. Or, you know, Rachel's really good at networking with the clients, if you know what I mean. The way she'd say networking made my skin crawl. She wanted me to react, but I didn't. I smiled. I acted polite. I pretended I was backing off, because I knew I was collecting ammo. Kevin helped without realizing at first. He'd forward me any chat where she was trash-talking me. One day he said, "You don't deserve this, Rachel. I'm sorry." I remember looking at him and saying, "Don't be sorry. Just save everything." He blinked at me, but he did it. Meanwhile, I went to HR quietly. Not to complain. Oh no. I asked Sarah for clarification about leave policies, about harassment guidelines, about how to report fraud. I told her, I just want to make sure I understand how this works. She gave me the employee manual. I highlighted it. Dog-eared pages. I built a case like an engineer designs a bridge, piece by piece. Proof of her calling me slurs in chat. Proof of her defamation about insurance fraud. Proof of her billing fraud. I wasn't going to accuse her without receipts. Because if there was one thing I learned from the first HR investigation, they needed everything documented. I made sure they'd have no choice. And while I was gathering evidence, Lisa had no idea. She thought she'd broken me. She thought my silence meant surrender. She actually got bolder. One afternoon in a meeting, she interrupted my presentation to correct me on a point she didn't even understand. She smirked while doing it. Mark just let her. I remember clenching my teeth so hard my jaw ached. But I didn't argue. I just let her keep digging her grave. Because I knew what was coming. After that meeting, I went back to my desk and opened my growing file of evidence. Screenshots. Emails. Billing exports. It was all there. I just sat and looked at it. It was terrifying. Because I knew once I sent it, there was no going back. This wasn't just a petty HR complaint. This was fraud. It could cost the company a client. It could get Lisa fired. It could ruin her career. A part of me hesitated. Was I really going to do this? But then I thought about every time she called me a liar. Every time she implied I was sleeping my way to promotions. Every time I cried in my car. She did that to me. And she'd keep doing it to the next woman. Not if I had anything to say about it. So I spent one last weekend at home perfecting the email. I attached everything. I wrote carefully, politely. I laid out the harassment, the defamation, the billing fraud, and I ended it with a single sentence that was both a promise and a threat. If this is not addressed internally, I will have no choice but to escalate it to the client to ensure compliance. My finger hovered over the send button. I took a deep breath, and I pressed it. I didn't know exactly what would happen next, but I knew this: there was no turning back. When I hit send, my heart was pounding so hard I thought I might faint. I sat there for a full minute, just staring at the screen, my hands shaking. Then I closed my laptop, and I waited. It's funny, people think revenge is this big, dramatic moment, but sometimes it's quiet. You just sit there in your cubicle with your polite smile while everything starts to burn around you. The next morning, I came in early. Our door was shut. Sarah wasn't at her desk. Mark looked nervous. Lisa wasn't even in yet. I sat down, opened my email, and tried to work. My hands were sweating. Every time someone walked by, I wondered if they knew. Finally, about an hour in, I got the email. Subject: meeting request, urgent. From Sarah. She'd copied Mark. My stomach twisted, but I forced myself to breathe. This was what I wanted. I replied, confirmed the time. Then I got up, went to the bathroom, and splashed cold water on my face. I looked at myself in the mirror. Eyes red from lack of sleep, but steady. I whispered, "You wanted this. Be ready." When I walked into HR, the mood was different this time. No fake neutrality. Sarah looked serious. Mark looked like he wanted to crawl under the table. Sarah spoke first. "Rachel, thank you for bringing these concerns forward. We've reviewed your documentation." She glanced at Mark, who cleared his throat. "It's serious," he admitted. "Very serious." No shit. They asked me questions, clarifications, where I got the timesheet exports, who sent me the chat logs. I answered everything calmly. I didn't let my voice shake. I didn't cry. I'd done that already. This wasn't about feelings anymore. It was about facts, evidence, accountability. Sarah thanked me for being thorough. I just nodded. Mark looked like he was going to be sick. He kept rubbing his forehead. He mumbled something about client exposure and legal liability. I didn't say anything. I let them sit with it, because they needed to. After the meeting, I went back to my desk. Lisa wasn't there yet. When she finally walked in, late, as usual, she looked confused. HR called her in about 10 minutes later. I watched her saunter down the hallway, oblivious. And I waited. The rest of the day was tense. Our door stayed closed for over an hour. When Lisa finally came out, her face was pale. Her eyes darted around the office. She didn't look at me. She packed up her purse and left early. No goodbye. No smug smile. Just gone. Kevin messaged me. "What's going on? She looks like she's seen a ghost." I just typed back, "Don't worry about it." I spent that afternoon finishing my work, answering emails, business as usual. But inside, I felt like I could finally breathe. It wasn't over yet, I knew that. HR had to do their own investigation. They'd have to verify everything. But they had my evidence. They couldn't ignore it. I went home that night exhausted. I poured myself a glass of wine and sat on my couch in silence. The weight of it all settled on me. For so long I'd felt powerless, voiceless. But sending that email changed everything. I wasn't begging to be believed anymore. I was demanding accountability, and they couldn't look away. The next few days were tense. Lisa didn't come back to the office. Mark avoided me like the plague. Sarah gave me polite updates. We're reviewing the timesheets. We're interviewing team members. We're coordinating with legal. Every time she spoke to me, she sounded a little more nervous. Because they knew. They knew they'd failed me before. They'd let Lisa get away with so much. They hadn't stopped her when she accused me of fraud. They told me to be the bigger person. And now they were realizing the risk she posed. Not just to me, to the company, to their clients. One afternoon, Kevin stopped by my desk. He whispered, "Is it true that you sent all that stuff to HR?" I looked him in the eye and nodded. He swallowed hard. Then he said, "Good." That single word meant everything, because it meant I wasn't crazy. I wasn't overreacting. I wasn't the problem. Lisa was. And I'd finally made them see it. But the real fallout was only just beginning. Because HR wasn't done yet. And neither was I. I'll never forget the day they called the whole team in for an emergency meeting. Mark tried to act calm. He stood at the front of the conference room with Sarah next to him, clutching a stack of printouts. But his voice shook. "Everyone," he began, "we've identified some irregularities in our billing practices that need to be addressed immediately." He didn't say Lisa's name. But he didn't have to. She wasn't there. Half the team glanced at her empty chair. Kevin shot me a look. I didn't react. I just sat there with my notebook open, pen in hand, pretending to take notes. Inside, I was cold. Because I knew what this was. This was the company covering its ass. Mark mumbled about compliance and client trust. Sarah explained there would be an internal audit. Everyone would need to resubmit their hours. And they were reviewing certain personnel decisions. The room was dead silent. You could practically hear people sweating. When they dismissed us, no one spoke. People just filed out in tense, confused silence. Kevin caught up to me at my desk. He whispered, "Did you do this?" I looked him in the eye and said, "She did this to herself." He stared at me for a long moment. Then he nodded. That afternoon, Lisa's name disappeared from the company directory. Her email auto-replied, "No longer with the company." It felt surreal. This woman who'd spent months trying to ruin me, just gone. No goodbye. No speech. No chance to twist the story one last time. She was erased. I waited for the guilt to hit. But it didn't. Because I remembered how she made me feel sitting in HR, forced to defend my medical choices. How she whispered that I was a liar, a fraud. How she smiled while people laughed at me behind my back. She'd wanted me fired. She'd wanted me humiliated. All I did was show them who she really was. HR called me in one last time. Sarah actually looked relieved to see me. "Rachel," she said, "I want to thank you for coming forward." I didn't smile. I said, "You didn't believe me last time." She winced. "I know. And I'm sorry." She actually sounded sincere. She told me they'd conducted a thorough review. Lisa had been double-billing clients for months. She'd lied on timesheets. She'd falsified emails. And yes, they'd confirmed the harassment, too. It was all in my file. Unignorable. I asked, "What happens now?" Sarah said they were issuing a formal apology to the client. They were implementing new compliance checks. Mandatory harassment training. She even said, quietly, there's going to be some leadership changes. Meaning Mark. I didn't say anything. Because I wasn't sure I cared anymore. I was so tired. When I got home that night, I sat on my porch with a cup of tea. No wine. No crying. Just silence. I watched the sun go down over the rooftops. I listened to the crickets. And I let myself feel it. The victory. Not the mover style, triumphant, standing on a desk cheering kind. No. It was quieter than that. Heavier. Because I knew what it had cost me. My peace. my trust, my sense of safety at work. But it was worth it, because Lisa would never do it to me again. She'd never do it to anyone here again. I thought about all the times people told me to let it go. Be the bigger person. Keep my head down. They'd said that to protect themselves, not me. And I was done protecting other people's comfort at my own expense. I was done being the nice girl who let it slide. I chose myself. I chose the truth. And I won. But even as I sat there, breathing easier than I had in months, I knew it wasn't truly over. Because I still had to face the wreckage she'd left behind, and decide what kind of person I wanted to be now. The next week at work was the strangest of my life. It was quiet. Almost too quiet. No more snide remarks in the break room. No fake sweet digs during meetings. No Lisa. But the silence wasn't peaceful. It was loaded. People walked on eggshells. Everyone knew why she was gone, even if HR never officially said her name. They whispered about it. They looked at me differently. Some with respect. Some with suspicion. Some with relief that it hadn't been them. Kevin was the only one who spoke to me directly. He brought me a coffee and set it on my desk without a word. I looked up at him, and he just nodded. That one small gesture meant everything. HR tried to do damage control. They sent an email about reaffirming our values. They promised new ethics training. They announced Mark was transitioning out of his role and would have interim leadership soon. It was corporate speak for his out. When Sarah asked me for feedback in a one-on-one, I didn't hold back. I told her how it felt to be interrogated about my surgery while my harasser laughed behind her desk. How they only acted when they realized it could cost them money. She listened. She looked ashamed. I don't know if anything will really change. But at least she heard me. The client we'd overbilled stayed on. Barely. They made us refund a ton of money. It nearly cost the company the contract. I felt a weird mix of satisfaction and sadness about that, because I didn't want to hurt the whole team. But I also knew this wouldn't have happened if anyone had listened to me sooner. If they'd held Lisa accountable before she got out of control. For the first time in months, I could focus on my work. I wasn't looking over my shoulder. I wasn't flinching when someone sent me a calendar invite. I wasn't crying in the car before walking in. That alone was worth everything. But there was still this ache in me, because I'd loved this job once. These people. I'd thought we were a team. But the truth was, when it got ugly, they let me twist in the wind. They let her humiliate me. No one spoke up except Kevin. They let me be sacrificed for their own comfort. That lesson hurt. Even now, months later, I don't think I'll ever forget it. It changed me. I don't trust so easily anymore. I'm not the bright-eyed, eager-to-please employee I used to be. I'm careful. I keep receipts. I know my rights. I don't let things slide. And I don't apologize for it. Because here's what I learned. Being the bigger person is what people say when they want you to swallow injustice for their convenience. It's what they tell you to keep you quiet, docile, easy to ignore. I'm not that person anymore. And honestly, good. People at work eventually stopped talking about Lisa. A few new hires didn't even know her name. She was a ghost. A cautionary tale HR wouldn't mention, but everyone remembered. They never replaced her role. We split her projects up. And you know what? We did just fine without her. Kevin and I stayed friends. He got promoted eventually. He told me once over lunch, "You know you scared the hell out of them, right?" I smiled. I wasn't trying to scare anyone. I just wanted the truth out. He shrugged. Same thing, really. I laughed for the first time in ages. I realized then that even though I'd lost so much, I'd gained something, too. I'd found my spine, my voice, my limit. I wasn't going to let anyone take those from me again. So that's my story. I didn't burn the whole company to the ground. I didn't get Lisa arrested or sued. I didn't even quit in some dramatic flourish. But I ended her reign of terror. I made them see her for who she was. And I made sure she'd never hurt me, or anyone else here, again. Some people call that petty. I call it justice. And I'd do it again in a heartbeat. So that's how you end someone's career without raising your voice. Remember, revenge doesn't always look like rage. Sometimes it's calm, documented, unavoidable. If you're ready to take notes on every move they don't see coming, like this video. Subscribe for more real strategies, not just stories. And hit the bell, because Revenge Action TV is where quiet plans get loud results. Don't get mad. Get even.